Well, hello, all you beautiful people. Welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa and happy Monday. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. And yeah, look forward to a beautiful new week. And what better way than our beautiful Brice? Hello,
I
Brice.
missed you
We
guys.
missed you last week. You've
I
been away a lot
didn't
lately.
mean for it to be 2 weeks, guys. But what do they say? If you ever want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. I was departed from you guys for a reason, and it was out of my control. But I'm so happy to be back, and I'm happy to announce, if I can, my sister gave birth to a very healthy, beautiful baby boy on July 4th at 11:30 p.m. He's almost 10 pounds. Matthew, little Maddie, he's his siblings, his older siblings are absolutely in love with him. His sibling, my niece May, who's 3, not quite sure how she feels about him, but but yeah. So thank you guys for all. I know I had a lot of people out there praying for my sister, and she's healthy. The baby's healthy. And so there's another new human being on the planet that hopefully will help make the planet a better place. So
Let's hope. We could only pray about that. Gosh. Certainly some craziness happening in the world around us at this point in time, isn't there?
I know.
So,
I'm like, welcome to the shit show, little one. Like, I just don't even know what to say. Sorry, I don't know. But what a time to be alive. Well, I know there's a lot we can't say on YouTube, the YouTubes, about what's going on, but most of you guys I think you got the current event updates with what's the shenanigans.
yeah, gosh. What's the story with Trump being hit in the ear?
I don't know, you guys. Now, I was so mad. So that was like Saturday evening. He was at a rally, and I was kind of mad at my boyfriend because I was like starting to kind of drift off to sleep, because I get up early on Sunday mornings because I teach. So I get up at like 3:30 and I practice before I go teach. And all of a sudden, my boyfriend goes, "Oh shit, Mr. T's been pow pow," when he said the real word. And so I sat up. I was like, "What?" Of course he has. Why wouldn't he have been? This is the world we live in. But I do have to say, there was another fatality at the event. A father like jumped over his family and got hit. So I do they're I think, as everybody's focused on Mr. T, which it's shocking, right, to have that happen. But we also have another human who lost their life at that event, just trying to protect his family. So my heart and my prayers go out to his family, because you don't expect that to happen. If you're just going to a rally, you don't expect that to happen, and it did happen. So anyway,
Has anyone been arrested? Is there anything that's come out around that?
And I know our audience might be better informed than I am, because we keep, like many of you guys watching, my boyfriend and I are obviously very aware of. I'm trying to be careful about what I say because we are on YouTube, but we're very aware of the establishment and the shenanigans, and maybe what we're seeing isn't actually what we're seeing. So we've been trying to look deeper into this. I think the guy, I think he was taken out at the event. We've looked at honestly, in my personal opinion, it was set up by the establishment, and it is, by what they show, with the way Mr. T literally like split second moved, and that's how it just nicked his ear. If he had been like half an inch closer, it would have taken him out. So, take that with what you will, but either that was an extremely well orchestrated show, or by the grace of God, he's alive. I don't know. We'll see. As my boyfriend always says, I'm someone, I want the answers right now. And my boyfriend's really good about going, let's just see how this plays out. Let's just see how this plays itself out before we make it totally make our. But anyway,
I must say, I have that attitude as well, as in things like this. It's like, okay, it's beyond my control.
Right.
It doesn't help me getting my knickers in a knot about it. So let's just step back and fry some popcorn with nice butter and salt and get my seat ready.
What happens? Yeah, and you're right. We can't control. The only thing we control is ourselves. And
Yeah.
so, and I will say, because my boyfriend has been awake since I'm going to be very careful how I say this. September of 2001 was his first kind of jolt of that's not how that. He was like, that's not how that happened. Like, that's not right, And he had just gotten back from like years in India too, so he had been doing all this yoga, and of course, yoga is really about seeing your own truth or your own illusion. So once you start to work on your own truth or your own illusion, you start to see it in the world around you as well. And so, as my boyfriend says, the yogis of Yorn, the Patanjali group, 5,000 years, they were the original conspiracy theorists, because they were like, wait a minute, something ain't right here. Something doesn't feel right. And so that's how yoga was created, by this practice of trying to find the truth. And so, after he spent those years in India, when that event happened in 2001, that kind of jolted him to start to figure out what the hell is actually going on, because it didn't make sense to him. And so he's been awake for a very long time. And I think in this great awakening we're in, everybody needs to find a friend who's been awake for a long time, because they'll help you remain grounded. Like, he's the one that taught me about junk conspiracy, that there is such thing as junk conspiracy, that when the truth starts getting out in the world, the establishment, because they know you're jolted awake and you see them for who they are, they will create junk conspiracy and put it in what they call the junk conspiracy cul-de-sac, where you're going round and round in circles debating over like whether JFK Jr. is alive or not, when meanwhile the real stuff is happening over here. And so he's been really good about teaching me to observe junk conspiracy as well.
The distractions, and the psyops and stuff like that. And that's really, a lot of the times we aren't even aware of it. Oh, sure, and we probably need to get moving. A lot of the times we aren't even aware of it, but it's like what's thrown into this one pot, and that's why discernment is so important, because we all need to.
And being able to be objective, like just being able to watch something without forming an opinion on it. And that's why I'm so glad we are talking about the Borgias, because as I've said over and over again, you guys, since it's been a couple of weeks, the Borgias are like my favorite family in history, because they're so juicy and they're so petty and they're so bad. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that I would want to live in the same time period as them, because before those said reasons. But I think that we can learn more about these establishment families by studying the stories of the past, so we can see the same patterns playing out, right? And I'm trying to be very careful about what I say, because I don't want, we know we're gearing up towards craziness, and so I know they're going to be really watching what we say, guys. So if you see me kind of pause, Shanti, when you have to watch what you say, it kind of leaves you tongue twisted sometimes, because you have to think of
for sure.
Like, your mind is saying the real word, but your mouth has to say a pretend word because of
it's true.
Because of the same establishment, the same exact establishment. So you guys, and we know that the Pope that we have now, there is speculation that Pope Francis is a descendant of the Borgias. I have thus found many descendants of the Borgias that are still alive and well and running our country. On my channel, I'm starting to look at the Paysor family, which we can obviously do here if you guys want to, at one point. And if the story of the Paysors is correct, then they are also a descendant of the Borgias through Cesare. So this is very interesting. And again, with that being said, as we said with Lucrezia, like being objective. And I know, Shanti, we've said this a lot. Just because somebody has a particular last name does not necessarily mean that they are guilty of the crimes of their family. And I have to just say that again one more time for those in the back who didn't hear. If it were not for people born into these families that had a freaking moral compass, we would not know half of the stuff we know today. So God bless the people born into these families who have carried like the scarlet letter of their last name. And yes, perhaps enjoyed the benefits of that last name, but have also done the Lord's work and put their life on the line to come out and warn us. All right. So we have to just look at every, generally speaking, the Borgia family is bad, but that doesn't mean every member of the Borgia family was bad. And I also want to just reiterate too, so like in the case of Lucrezia, I think a lot of her actions were taken for survival purposes. And I cannot judge her for that because we're not in that situation. And so anyway, now I realize, I know we're going to talk about Juan today, and y'all, I died researching Juan because we know he has an unsolved, like he's an unsolved schmurder, we'll say. Like nobody knows who schmurdered him. Because I know that M word can be a little bit sticky on YouTube, so we'll say schmurdered him, but his body's missing too. I died when I found that. I didn't know that. Y'all know we have talked about so many
not just a body part, the whole thing.
The whole body's gone. Like, what? I'm like, when I was researching this, I was like, how come nobody has spoken about the fact that they lost his damn body? But before we get to Juan, I realized last week we didn't even talk about the banquet of chestnuts quickly, or do we want to just recap that with Cesare? And I had to be very careful about how I say this, guys. We didn't talk. Do we want to do that, Shanti? Talk a little bit about the allegations with the banquet of the chestnuts and stuff? Okay, so we gave kind of Cesare's a couple weeks ago. So if you missed that, go back in Aquarius Rising Africa, find the video we did on Cesare where we just kind of talked about his life, right? But we kind of skimmed over some of the more juicy stuff with Cesare. I just want to remind you guys that Nicola Machiavelli's book, The Prince, is based on Cesare Borgia. This is not conspiracy. This is not opinion. Like Machiavelli himself based this on Cesare Borgia. And you guys know, like, Machiavellianism, like that's got its own like meaning now for someone who will do unscrupulous things to get what they want in the name of power. And that's based off of The Prince. Now, what historians debate upon is whether he wrote The Prince as like a documentary over Cesare's life, because there obviously were no cameras to film, like basically giving us like an inside view as to what this person was really like, or if he wrote it as like a manual to teach people how to be like Cesare. And both could be true, right? He could have just written it as like, this is what this asshole's up to. But in the same time, bad people could have used these teachings of Cesare's to get what they want. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes.
You know, so I don't know if we can like blame Machiavelli for creating this sense of teaching, or, you know, he could have again just been trying to show us like what was really happening. So again, you guys, we talked about it last week. There is a great Billy Carson episode where he goes over Cesare Borgia and his relationship with Da Vinci, becoming the Jesus painting. I don't think we have the time to go in depth of what Billy Carson is talking about. I would totally suggest you guys watch that. Billy Carson does not mince words. He's not going to sugarcoat it. He says it as it is. Like this is like an energy vampire, as Billy Carson states, which I think he's correct. This guy is literally time traveling. And I've talked about Sergei Monast before on my channel. And it kind of goes hand in hand with what Sergei Monast was saying in like the 1990s. So Sergei Monast was a reporter, a French-Canadian reporter in the 90s who basically was able to crack the code of Operation Bluebeam, it's Bluebeam, right? Which we think of that as being like the alien operation. But before it was the alien, they had to change it to aliens because of Sergei Monast. Sergei Monast basically found out that what the establishment was trying to do, they were going to put a hologram of Jesus, and I'm saying Jesus, not Yahshua, Jesus in the sky, to convince people that the second coming was here, so that they would blindly follow this hologram of Jesus into the New World Order. He broke this story. Okay? He ended up being schmurdered, we'll say, himself. Interesting, right? Obviously, his schmurder and his reporting have like nothing to do with each other, right? It's just a coincidence, right? That the minute he called it his Toronto protocols, right? Because he broke in and found this information out. So when I started studying Cesare Borgia and the Jesus painting, and then I remember reading about Sergei Monast and his findings, it all made sense, right? It all made sense. Right. So basically what this group has done, these Borgias, they use Cesare's face and image to infiltrate this image of Jesus. Not only that, but when you and Billy Carson is right. I do the same thing. Even though I know the real Yahshua was black, whenever I think of him, Cesare Borgia pops into my head, because since we were little kids and our parents, so it's in there, our DNA, every freaking church, whether you're a Catholic, whether you're a Protestant, whether you're a freaking Mormon, a Jehovah's Witness, every flavor of Christianity has the exact same painting of damn Cesare Borgia in their church. So energetically, that becomes your drishti. A drishti is your focal point. So you're praying to this, and when they changed his name to Jesus, which is the Zeus, right? The god of war, destruction. Yeah. So energetically, you've been caught up in a huge spell.
I agree. Sorry, I want to just interject here. I wanted to actually just say that. And I mean, the Zeus, Jesus, that part, guys, is very true. And I mean, I know Caleb has even mentioned that in the past. So Jesus is not his real name.
Nope.
And they've intertwined that, as you say, with the face of somebody completely different. As you say, the drishti, your gaze, your focus point, then becomes this entity, this energy that they've put out there. I mean, but let's just, it's not even about being anti-Bible or religion. It's not about that. This to me is just common sense. Let's look at that. You know, Jesus was born relatively recently. 2,000 odd years ago. Okay. So there was nothing hugely different about the planet at that time, right?
Possibly even sooner. We don't know. He could have been born in a sooner time. Yeah. So you're right.
It is. We don't know. Yeah. We can only take what there is. But and this to me is where discernment and prayer and using, you know, as women, we have very strong intuition. And when we learn to trust it, I mean, the opposite of the heavy using that intuition is manipulation, right? We do not want to manipulate things. Yeah. But when you have strong intuition, that really is the thing that links you to the voice of God. And soon, you know, when it's your imagination or when it's really God speaking. And that's the thing. So, you know, we have to learn how to discern in these types of situations, because you know, when we are doing, I mean, it's coming to the fore more and more now, how through the biblical teachings, obviously, and the more we're learning, you know, religion, unfortunately and sadly, has been so corrupted.
So corrupted.
And we know, I mean, just if we look at the King James Bible, I mean, we know who King James is. Jesus was, or Yahshua, was... How on earth is it even possible to have this man as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man in the Middle East somewhere? Okay, arguably wherever, right? But he was, you know, it's impossible. Yeah. I mean, he would have sizzled into bacon in seconds, right? With that fair skin. I mean, so let's just think about that. It's impossible that he was blonde-haired and blue-eyed. So it would be more obvious that the skin tone was more in line with, obviously, the culture and his tribe. So, you know, to me, that's logical. It's not even something that anyone has to tell me or drive home to me. It's logical. So we can think about these things, you know, and we have to keep an open mind when we're looking into history, because we can see how often history has repeated itself over and over. That whole staying in the matrix. Right now, we have the opportunity to exit the matrix. And we do so through understanding this information, because it's this type of information that has kept us trapped in that matrix.
And look at what we get. I mean, and it's right, because look at, like, we get, Shanti, we get it. Billy Carson gets it attacked all the time from Christians. So the Christians claim to be like this religion of peace. Well, I have not experienced that. In fact, most of the we'll say the unaliving threats I get are from fundamentalists. And so it makes sense when you know that the deity they're praying to is a deity of vengeance, war, bloodlust. It's and Zeus also, we talked about the Dionysian cult. That's the Zeus cult. That's cannibalism, where they were cannibals, and they also murdered children in the act of intimacy. And that's what the Christian.
That's the whole satanic culture. I don't even think that's just the Dionysian culture. That's everything Luciferian, and that's the whole thing when we're looking at the secret societies, what I figured very quickly is and I mean, Jesse agrees with me there's one core body, the secret brotherhood, with a hell of a lot of limbs and tentacles going off, name different things, right? And having a sub culture there or whatever it might be, but they are all linked to the same secret brotherhood that serve the same dark lord that requires the same disgusting practices. So it doesn't matter how you're going to wrap it up. When you unwrap that gift wrap, you're going to see it's that in some type of packaging.
Absolutely. And I want to make that clear. Like, what people don't understand is when I talk about this, I'm a huge fan of Joshua. Joshua ben Yosef, the real person, I'm a huge fan of his. I think he was extraordinary in what he was able to accomplish when he was here. Because I'm differentiating between Jesus and Joshua. Cesare Borgia was the inspiration for Jesus. Joshua was a different person. They took part of his story, part of his teaching, the influence that he had on so many people to do better and to save themselves and to find the love within themselves. They took that and they, like you said, Shanti, they manipulated it and they put it into this very deceitful cult. And you will not, in my opinion, the most hate-filled people that I've ever run into are people who claim to be devotees of Jesus. Obviously, there are incredible Christians out there too. But as far as like my experience with violent people, the most violent people I've ever met have been the fundamentalist Christians. Look at Westboro Baptist Church, right? Look at the IBLP and Bill Gothard. Like, look at all of this. It makes sense when you see, oh, well, of course that's why they're behaving that way, because they're praying to a literal demon. They're a literal, and I thought about that too. You know, when I was a kid growing up in the Presbyterian church, we had this practice of like doing these prayers where you invite Jesus into your heart. What? Now I look back, what are you talking about? What demon have you just invited into you? Because from my understanding of the missing books of the Bible and what Joshua taught and what the other sacred scripture teaches is that you're already born with the fractal of God. There's nothing you have to bring into you that's going to complete you. So
it's already in you.
It's already in you. So what the hell are they having young children when they make them say this prayer? What are these children inviting into their lives? And is that why people turn so vicious in this religion? Just a speculation. And it's again, I just want to reiterate.
Well, you shall know it by its fruit.
Exactly.
You know, again, this is what I say, you know, step back and just observe the fruit, you know. That's biblical as well, you know. And for those of you who've watched the Arbiter of Magic of the Ancients, I mean, I go right back to chapter 7, the last chapter. I'll never forget that night I was reading that. It just, I mean, I could see how they did it, right? But it became so clear to me that in that moment, because they say there very clearly that unless you have the real Christ in your heart, you will fall down.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful. And I was like, and I mean, I remember saying to Caleb, they've just told us, he said, right?
100%. And that's so funny, Shanti. And I don't mean to like toot my own horn or anything, because God knows these past 18 years of my spiritual journey, I've hit rock bottom so many times. But I can safely say in 2024, I feel very secure in my relationship with the divine. I feel very secure in what my moral compass is and where my own weaknesses are. And I feel very secure in my relationship with God. And I'm very comfortable. And it actually pisses me off that other people are being manipulated by the church, because I want to shake people and be like, do you not understand how beautiful you are and how amazing you are? And you are being so duped by this fake Christ, by this shit out there. You don't even realize how amazing you are. Just, and it's not, again, it's people, when I talk about this with the Jesus character, they negate the fact that, as I just said, Jesus isn't Yahshua. These are two different people. These are two different people. And the whole crucifixion, when you read the missing books of the Bible, he was never crucified. Because, my friends, let's think about this objectively, because I know that's going to trigger people. As they've trained you to be programmed and triggered by this, because what are they? They do human sacrifices. They do blood rituals. What is the crucifixion of Jesus? What is communion? It's a blood ritual. It's a human sacrifice for you to have a good life. That's the exact same thing they're doing at Bohemian Grove. It's the exact same thing they're doing on that island that starts with an E, right? If you read them and think about it this way, like a real loving God is never going to ask you to believe in a human sacrifice and cannibalism in order for you to be accepted into heaven. Yahshua himself, they even talk about cognitive dissonance. They even took that lesson and put it in the fake Bible with Jesus saying, heaven lies inside of you. It lies inside of you. It's not somewhere you get to. And so it breaks my heart that so many people, and I think Mr. Fox even mentioned it on a show with you, Shanti, once, about the churches, that they use these like 4D negative people who are trying to go 4D in their organic portals, they're flying monkeys, to bring souled people into these religions to get them to behave in ways that are not congruent to the way that they actually are. And once you can see it, you can take responsibility for it and you can exit. You don't have to be a part of that. I know, Michelle, you said it's about the Holy Spirit in you. Yes, but what we're saying, Michelle, is that you are already born with the Holy Spirit inside of you. So Jesus is not the Holy Spirit. Jesus is Cesare Borgia, is Zeus. And this is all facts. Like, this is all facts, and so anyway, I want you guys to really understand too. I think I've said this before, that if your belief in God is confined to a book, then you don't have a belief in God. You have a belief in a book. God is not confined to a book. God is bigger. My 3-year-old niece, the one I was just talking about, she knows God, and she just learned how to go TT in the potty, right? Like, she doesn't know how to read yet. She doesn't know, but she knows God. So I think we just have to like reclaim that relationship that we have with God and remove, I was doing research this morning into Gemma Galgani, which we're going to cover a little bit later. And she was a stigmatic, and I kind of go off because I'm like, I'm so in my research, because I'm so freaking, it just drives me crazy that so many people think that there's another human being out there that somehow is superior to you in the eyes of God. No other human being out there is superior to you in the eyes of God. You are just as equal to God as anybody else. Anyway, so we went off on a bit of a tangent there, but I just hope people, like, it is my prayer that people take their power back and realize how unbelievably special you are. And you don't need to be bossed around by some freaking malignant cult that just wants your soul. I mean, the name church, I've talked about this, the name church, if you look at the etymology of church, why do we call it a church? Why don't we call it a temple? We call it a church because it's named after a demon. This is a demon's name. That his job is to get you into mind control, like brainwash you, get you under hypnotics, and then suck your soul out. That's what church means. That's what it means. And this freaking like establishment, what they've done is they laugh at us because they put these words in the book or in the world. I'm sorry, I was reading comments as I said that. in the world. They put these words out there that's basically taunting us. Like they're telling us by calling it a church, they're telling us that you're going to demon worship. But they're hoping you're too naive to actually research, or you're too gullible to actually research. Well, gig is up because now we're fucking researching, right? Now we're researching. And I have to remind you guys, we'll get back to it because I know you guys want to hear about the banquet of chestnuts. So let me just tell you guys what happened. Let's kind of switch. Let's just talk about the gossip. Shanti, do you want to hear the gossip about what happened? The petty, juicy
Of
gossip?
course, spill that tea, babe. Spill that tea.
I'm laughing at this because we're 500 years separated, so I can laugh at this. I feel very, very sorry for the victims of the banquet of chestnuts. But you guys, so let me talk about how this was discovered. The banquet of chestnuts was basically a huge, we'll say, smorgy that happened with the Borgias in the Vatican. All right. How did we figure out this happened? So let's talk about the Vatican Library, calling the churches in my shower. I often sometimes think what the demons must think about us when we're picking our nose and shaving our legs in the shower. But anyway, so we know that there's this Vatican library, right? We know that. I've talked about this. This is where all the missing books are. This is where all the giant books are. There's so much crap in that Vatican library that we need to see, but we can't see because they keep it in secret. All right, so this is called the Vatican Apostolic Archives, or the Vatican Secret Archives. So this sits in the central repository of the Vatican City. The information in the archives is owned by the Pope. All right, so Pope Paul V, who lived from 1605 to his papacy was from 1605 to 1621, separated the secret archives from the library. All right, so he was the one that was like, we got some really scandalous stuff that we can't show the public. So he created this secret library. Well, Pope Leo the 13th, he decided in the late 19th century that he was going to open the secret libraries to allow some scholars in, because so many people were like nagging at them, like, why is there a secret? Kind of like we're doing now, over 100 years separated. Like, why is there a freaking secret library? Like, what the hell is going on? Like, we deserve to see this stuff. And so Pope Leo XIII probably was like, it can't be that bad, right? It can't be that bad. And so Pope Leo XIII opened up the secret library for a limited time for historians and researchers to go in there and look through the stuff. Now, whichever historian was the one that went for the diaries, I think that historian was probably a man. It was probably a man, not a woman, given the time period.
I would say that must be a woman.
Probably he was a gay man. Let's just put it that way, because like, screw the scriptures. Like, let me read the diaries. Like, let me see the diaries. So this historian found these diaries about the Borgias, and that's how we know all of this stuff, guys, because he read the secret diary. And so that's how we know about all these orgies, where this freaking historian picked up this diary and was like, y'all, you guys, like, the Vatican was a freaking brothel back. Like, he was probably reading this like, holy crap, you guys, this is way better than the missing books of the Bible. This shit's juicy. So the big thing was the bouquet of chestnuts, as I said. You guys, so all the Borgias, so all the children, and again, Lucrezia was there herself as well, according to these diaries. Multiple diaries recount this event. I think Lucrezia was forced to be there. That's my opinion. Maybe that's confirmation bias as a woman myself. But Pope Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia, along with Cesare, Lucrezia, and other of his close family members. Juan was already schmurdered by now, which we're eventually going to get to Juan schmurdering. They had this big schmorgy, we'll say, in the Vatican. They brought in a bunch of sex workers from the brothels, because the Vatican was surrounded by brothels in Rome, which again, we're going to talk to because that kind of plays into Juan's story. And they also forced the nuns. And they had, because, the Borgias were filthy rich. Like, they were the richest family in Italy. So they played these games where they would have, and that's why it's called chestnuts. They had these chestnuts everywhere, where the men I'm trying to see how I can say this without triggering YouTube. Whoever could RAPE the most women in that room in that one night won like all.
No, you cannot be telling me the truth now.
This is the banquet of chestnuts. So there's paintings, there's very famous paintings people have done depicting the banquet of chestnuts. So there was a bunch of what I believe to be ritualistic Dionysian schmorgies,
Yeah,
where,
for sure.
and I'm guessing that some of the workers, we'll say the intimacy workers that they brought in for the brothels probably were children, if I had to guess, especially at this time, young girls. So
Yeah.
and these diaries basically talked about all the times that the Borgia family would do this in the Vatican. And the thing is, though, again, if we look back at what was going on, because we know that Pope Alexander VI was not the only alleged Satanist who was a pope. We know we have multiple alleged Satanists that were very open about their satanic practices in the Vatican before and after Rodrigo Borgia. But the thing is, like, once we start to understand, as Billy Carson was saying, where this all stems from, it's not blasphemy, because the whole Catholic, the whole church system is designed off of the satanic faith. So they're doing satanic rituals in a religion that's satanic, right? And that's what Pope Paul V in 1605 wanted to hide from the people. Because as time goes on, as we're seeing it, more and more people start to get their power. The people, in the 1600s, we had, what was it, Oliver Cromwell in England. I mean, people are starting to push back against the establishment at this time. And so we've got to change tactics. And we're the establishment, when the Borgias were alive and popes before the Borgias, there was such a divide between the have and the have-nots, the establishment and the common folk. The establishment could literally do crap in front of people's faces and there's nothing they could do about it. But as time goes on, the people are gaining more power. The people are coming into an age of reason. The people are starting to establish themselves, and over time are learning more and more and more and more about what things are. So they start to push back, right? So what does Pope Paul V got to do? The established has to change tactics. As the establishment, we can't be doing this stuff in front of the people anymore. We've got to hide the secrets of what we do. We've got to now manipulate the people through witchery and spell casting so that they go docile again. All right. And then Pope Leo, bless his heart, was like, how bad can this be? In the late 19th century, 200 years later, almost 300 years later, and whoops. So, thank God Pope Leo the 13th was a little naive to the secrets hidden in the Vatican Library, and thank God for the nosy historians who went for the diaries instead of the missing scriptures, because here we are in 2024, where we have even more information now. We're able to connect the dots as to what's really going on here. And I would highly suggest
scandalous ancestors.
And we can laugh at them about it, I really highly suggest, again, if you check out Billy Carson's episode on Cesare Borgia, you guys, he goes into even deeper detail about Zeus and what's going on. I would totally suggest you guys watching him. Billy Carson is fantastic. So with that being said, let's see if we can get Juan in here quickly, because I know I've got to now go and find my notes on Juan. All right. So I titled this Giovanni Borgia, the Unsolved Mystery. So his name was actually Giovanni, you guys, which Juan is a nickname for Giovanni. I'm going to refer to him as Juan because that's what everybody called him, was Juan. So he was born in 1476. He was the second son of Rodrigo Borgia, brought up with his full-blooded siblings. So again, Cesare, Juan, Lucrezia, Geoffrey were all full-blooded siblings. And that's the one aspect of the Borgia family that I find kind of sweet, is that they really, if we compare the way the kids were raised to us in our modern times, very similar to how a lot of us were raised with our siblings, like a typical house where you are with your siblings, And this time, especially with illegitimate children, depending on who their mother was, they were not raised with siblings. So, and I can see how these kids the Borgia kids, in fairness to them, how the Borgia kids, the 4 of them specifically, the full-blooded siblings, had a very tight relationship because this is a dog-eat-dog world. Like, Italian Renaissance was brutal. You know, you got the Orsinis and the Medici. You got these, like, crime families. Not only do you have the corruption of the Vatican, but you've got these crime families literally killing people left, right, and center. You know, which we're going to talk more about next week with Joffrey Borgia, the youngest son. But so he was, so we also have to talk about another one of Rodrigo's kids. Now, most of Rodrigo's other illegitimate children, as we said before, died very young. So they did not make it to adolescence. They died as children. But he had a child, an illegitimate child named Pier Luigi. And this was a half sibling to the 4 Borgia children. So at 12 years old in 1488, Juan, this is before Pope Alexander, this is 4 years before Pope Alexander becomes the Pope, where he's just a cardinal now. Juan is removed from his mother's house and put in custody of his older half-brother, Pier Luigi. Now, let's talk a little bit about Pier Luigi. Pier Luigi was born sometime between 1458 and 1460, so he was significantly older than his 4 half-siblings through Boneza. Now, remember, the Borgias are Spanish, of Spanish descent. So at this point, if we look back in Spanish history, we're leading up to the Spanish Inquisition. And no offense to anybody who's Spanish, because all of the European countries had an Inquisition, but the Spanish Inquisition literally was the most savage of them all, with Ferdinand and Isabel. Part of this Spanish Inquisition was to get rid of not only Jewish people, but also Muslims. So if you guys know anything about what they tell us about Spanish history and the official narrative, is that a lot of Spanish architecture, I've spent a lot of time in Spain myself. I've traveled there many times. I love Spain. I think Spain is a very underrated country for most people. Like, most people don't think to go to Spain. Spain is, especially from America.
Oh, it's on my bucket list. I've never been to Spain, but it's high on my bucket list.
I've spent actually a lot of time in the area where we're talking about.
Spain and Italy and Turkey. Spain, Italy, and Turkey. Yep, I want to go there.
Italy as well. I've been to Vatican. But Spain is such, the Spanish people today are some of the kindest people. I spent a summer in a very small town in Spain where not many of the Spanish people spoke English, and of course my Spanish. And there's a difference. I'm better at Spanish than most foreign languages. I'm not fluent in Spanish, but because we have so many Spanish people in America, I'm kind of familiar with it. I can get around with it. But Spain Spanish and Mexican Spanish are different. Spain, just like English in England and South Africa and America are different. Same thing. There's a lisp with like gracias, like in Spain it's gracias, whereas in Mexico it's gracias. You know, so there's a little different in accents. But anyway, nonetheless, the summer I spent in this very small town in Spain, most of the locals there were so unbelievably kind. And even though they didn't speak English and my Spanish wasn't that great, they went above and beyond to welcome me into their community, to be friendly to me. I felt so safe with these people, like beautiful, beautiful people, beautiful country, very beautiful country. The architect, though, is very Islamic because of the Moors that came into Spain. So the area of Spain at this point that was really still dominated by Islam was an area called Granada. And again, this is most of the time. I mean, I've spent time in Madrid as well, but Barcelona, Valencia, this whole area of Spain is kind of the Granada area where I've spent a lot of time. And at this point, so the Islamic people had been owning this principality of Granada since 711. So during the 14th, 13th, 15th century, we had what's called. Yes.
Just hang on, the sound has gone crazy. I want to just hear from someone in the chat. Is it just me or has Brice gone funny? Talk again.
Hello.
Sounds better now.
All right. So if there is an entity in my computer system, Jessica, I wish sometimes, Jessica, I wish. They don't like what we're talking about. And this makes sense. Shanti knows a little bit of what happened to me last week. So this makes sense. If there's an entity in my community system that's here, or my Zoom system, my application, my StreamYard that is for nefarious purposes, that doesn't want this information out, I do not consent to you being here. You've got to go. You've got to go. I don't consent. You can't be here. I have no, you got to go. I'm asking for my guides to come and remove any nefarious being that's trying to mess with us right now. And they're desperate, y'all. As we can see, they're going to be doubling down. They're going to be doubling down as we go forward. But nonetheless, where were we? What did you guys miss any of that? Did it just with the Granada stuff?
Yeah, I think what I'm just trying to backtrack to be what you were saying when the sound was crazy. Sorry, I'm just reading the comments here as well. Interesting.
Emma's really just side note. Bless their hearts. Shanti pissed them off that they just can't stop us, and we are so cute doing this, and they're just so ugly. I mean, look at our audience. Our audience is so cute too. Like, that must really piss them off. All right, sure, Lisa said I was talking about my time in the small village in Spain. Yeah, beautiful Spanish people. That's what I meant to say. So when I talk about like when I talk about like the government of Spain and Ferdinand and Isabel, I think it goes without say at this point, but I know we have to say it. Whenever I talk about any type of government system and whatever country we're speaking about, please understand I'm not talking about the people. I'm not talking about the people in any government. Right. Shanti is South African, but she's not her government, right? I'm American, but I'm not my government.
Thank God, right? I'm not my government. Jeez.
Same. You know, are the UK people we've got, you're not the monarchy. You're not the government, you know, so that's what I'm trying to say, because we're going to talk a little bit about Ferdinand and Isabel and their Inquisition and what happened with the Moors and the Islamic people. But I really want to just put that out there that my experience with the Spanish people is that they're the loveliest people you will ever meet. So this is not them. Is my voice still okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Wow, I cannot. These. Is that all you got? That you're just going to mess with my voice? So anyway, so listen, no, I'm not going to challenge them, but all right. So the Granada War, that was a war over the Emirate of Granada, which was the last independent Muslim state in the late 15th century. During the Granada War, Pierre Luigi helped secure Granada for Ferdinand and Isabel. Okay, so he helped destroy the Muslims. He helped destroy for the yeah, I am, Jessica. I'm ready to fight. I see them for who they are. And I see their petty diaries. Like, we can just laugh at them. So anyway, Pierre Luigi gets given the title the Grandee of Spain on May 18th of 1485. He becomes an official aristocrat in Spanish nobility for the Borgia house because of his assistance in the War of Granada. He becomes the first Duke of the House of Borgia for Granada. So a Duke is a prince. So Pierre Luigi is the first child of Rodrigo Borgias to secure a royal title. All right. So, and that happened on December 20th of 1483. So in 1488, Juan is sent to live with his half-brother, Pierre Luigi. So we know that Rodrigo is going to send Cesare into the cloth, right? He's going to put Cesare, as we talked about with Cesare, into the church. He's going to take Juan, and he's going to put Juan into the military, the secular world. And so Pierre Luigi is obviously very militarily skilled. So Juan is going to go learn from his older brother on how to conduct military as they slaughter the Muslims of Spain. All right. So, however, as any good twisty, turny story happens, the same year that 12-year-old Juan goes to live with Pierre Luigi, his brother mysteriously dies. He's schmurdered. He's unalived by people that hate the Borgias, which is a lot of people. All right. Now, get this, guys. This is super wild, and I hope that this pisses off the females among us and some men, just like it pissed me off. So when Pierre Luigi dies unexpectedly of a schmurder by his enemies, by the Borgia enemies, Juan, who is 12 years old, they go to read his will. So in his will, Pierluigi makes Juan the second Duke of Granada. So Juan inherits the titles of his half-brother Pierluigi. Juan also inherits, oh, this pisses me off so much. He also inherits his older brother's fiance, women. So his older brother, Pierluigi, had been arranged to marry Maria Enrique de Luna. Maria Enrique de Luna was cousin to Ferdinand II. So Pierluigi not only was granted the Dukedom of Granada, a prince title, he was in negotiations to marry Ferdinand's cousin Maria. And then when Pierluigi is murdered, then Juan gets the title and inherits an engagement to a woman. Like this woman is freaking cattle. Like she's a house to inherit. So now Juan, all of a sudden, is at 12 years old, he's a duke and he's got a fiance.
How old was she?
She was actually closer to his age. She was born in 1474. She was 2 years older than him. So that's the plus side, guys. That's the plus side.
I was going to say, thank God for that.
At least she didn't have to marry an old dude. At least she could marry a boy who was like closer to her age. But
that must have had quite a cool time, those two, because you know how teenagers are. They just know they rule the world. So those two must have had some fun.
Well, the funny thing that cracks me up because it's very different. We're going to talk about this with Joffrey as well, his younger brother. But we had this issue with Lucrezia. Like she was way too young to be married. They had to wait for her to get her period. Well, kind of the same thing with Juan. Like we kind of have an uh-oh here, like uh-oh, because Juan's 12. And this is going to sound so crass. I don't know how to say this without, biologically speaking, I don't know if a 12-year-old boy can do what needs to be done intimately. He's probably happier just like playing with his.
I have no idea about that, actually.
I don't either. I mean, we see this with women. They're concerned about the period, right? We saw this with Lucrezia. So with Juan, in August of 1493, that's when Juan actually marries her, but they hold him back for a while because they deem him too young to actually get married. So they got to wait. And I think what they're waiting for is him to be able to know what to do intimately to create children. So in 1493.
Isn't that like quite normal, though? That's quite a normal thing, isn't it?
To wait.
I mean, it's. No, I think it's, if you're going through puberty and all of that stuff, it's a natural thing for him to know how to have sex with someone, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I just know that they basically, when he was 12, they told him he was too young to get married, that they had to wait for a little bit, but they kept the negotiation.
I love the way they tell the boys they're too young to get married, but the girls can get married.
Yeah, the girls, we just got to get their period, right? So yeah. He ends up marrying Maria Enrique de Luna when he is 17 years old. So August of 1493, so a year after Daddy becomes Pope. I saw the funniest comment. I was listening to a podcast of another historian talking about the Borgias, and there was this comment where this guy was like, "It is the most gangster thing to say to be like, my daddy's the Pope." Like, I just laughed so hard when I saw that. Like, the gangster thing to be like, my daddy's the Pope. But so, and a lot of times with the Borgia too, I heard a lot of historians talk about the Borgias as being what we would call today nuevo riche, which means new money. So when we talk about this idea of new money versus old money is very subtle, like people who have had money for generations and generations will drive a Honda Accord, right? Will shop at Target. They're not, but people with new money, they'll bling themselves out, right? They'll buy the Porsches. They want to show everybody their status. So when Juan gets sent back to Spain to finally marry Maria at 17 years old, his daddy, his Pope daddy, his gangster Pope daddy, sends him to Spain with all this pomp and circumstance. Like, he is sent in with jewels, with just a parade of it is like, for a 17-year-old kid, like, whoa. But he marries Maria Enrique de Luna. He spends 3 years in Spain with Maria. And they have 2 children together, which I'm actually following some of these children's. Just spoiler alert, guys. I'm doing this with a lot of the Borgia. I've actually been, because I'm so interested in the patterns we're seeing with the powers that be, that I've actually been, I'm going to be following some of these children's birth line. Spoiler alert. So some of the kids I'm going to follow are actually Juan's kids with Maria. So they had Juan de Borgia y Enrique on November 10th of 1494. Juan de Borgia y Enrique, his son, would go on to be the 3rd Duke of Granada after his father is schmurdered. And then they have on January 15th, 1497, Isabella de Borgia y Enrique. And she never knew her father. So Isabel never knew her father. She was born 7 months after her father left for Rome. Because daddy, when Maria is 3 months pregnant with Isabel, their second child, legitimate child, Juan did have illegitimate children as well. But we can't, the illegitimate children that he had, we don't have records to trace their bloodline. I'm looking at the legitimate children because we actually have the records in these royal families, right? That's the one thing, is that these royal families love to keep records of themselves. And so thank you. It gives us a chance to actually look at what's going on in their families. So Daddy Pope calls Juan back to Rome because he's going to now bestow all these titles upon Juan. Because Juan has, and we talked a little bit about the between Cesare and Juan last time, where there's a lot of, bless you, Shanti.
Oh, sorry.
Bless you. Daddy Pope had 2 different trajectories for Cesare and Juan. Cesare was in the cloth. Juan was going to go into the military. So Cesare's trajectory a lot of historians believe, and I happen to concur, to agree, that Rodrigo was prepping Cesare to eventually be a pope. Now, we know that didn't happen for Cesare because he pulled out of the cloth after Juan was murdered. But because the papacy path is a longer path, of course, Juan is going to be able to achieve certain goals at a younger age. Even though looking back objectively, we can see that as being logical, I could definitely see how this would trigger Cesare and piss Cesare off. So by 12 years old, Juan is already the Duke of Granada. He's now married into the Spanish royal family and had 2 children. So not only did he marry them, but he's got 2 legitimate children, which really secures the Borgias in with this royal family of Spain. And so Daddy calls his son, his 20-year-old son, back to Rome to give him more titles. So he arrives back in Rome, and his father makes him the Duke of Sessa, the Grand Constable of Naples, the Governor of St. Peter's, and the Captain General of the Church. The Captain General of the Church is the title of the papal army. So a 20-year-old boy who's actually never fought in a war ever, Pierre Luigi, his older brother, would have actually probably earned that title because he proved he could military pretty well. So this 20-year-old boy who's already, we talked a little bit about the differences between Cesare and Juan and their personality. From what we understand, Cesare was way more controlled. Cesare was not as reactionary. Cesare definitely had older child vibes, in my opinion, and energy. He was very organized. Juan was a partier. There's that joke on Instagram going around. It's like, which one of your children do you think is, if one of your children were to be arrested one day, which one of your children do you think it is, and why is it your second child? There's this whole joke about how second children are the wilder kids. The first child is usually very organized, very focused. The second child is wild. And we know that Cesare had to cover for Juan a lot because Juan loved brothels. He loved sporting his money. He dressed very elaborately in what would have been like Renaissance dress. So very bright colors. I listened to a very interesting podcast over a clothing historian, which was so fascinating. I didn't even know people did this for a job, where they talked about how people dress in history. And she talked a lot about Juan Borgia, and especially the night of his murder, and how he would have dressed compared to the area, the more poverty-stricken area his body was found. Men back then wore tights with different colors. They were a lot of feathery outfits, very elaborate. What we today would see as very feminine, like think about a gay pride parade and what they wear at gay pride parades. That's what straight men were wearing on a day-to-day basis to show their wealth, right? Jewels, tons of jewels. So Juan was very much an exhibitionist in his money and his power. Juan, in my opinion, sounds very bratty, like very, very bratty. Whereas Cesare, even though Cesare was a really bad dude, I don't think Cesare was as bratty as Juan. Cesare, again, was very controlled. He did not react. He wasn't reactionary, very organized. Now, Chantelle, I know we're at an hour. Do we have time to keep going, or do you have another call? Because this is a good place to break.
I have another call in 10 minutes. So we have 5 minutes.
All right. So what I think we should do, because I really want to get into the night of his murder and what we know that what happened, I think we should probably pause the story there, leave you guys on there, and then pick up next week with the actual night of his murder. Because I've got the breakdown, guys. I got y'all know I got all the crime scene analytics. I've got all the suspects. I got everything. We got to talk about not only the mystery of who murdered him, but we got to talk about why Rodrigo Borgia called off the investigation into his murder. And then we got to talk about where his body might be, because no one knows where it is today. So let me mark that here. So we'll leave you guys on a cliffhanger. But I do, as always, encourage you guys to research this for yourself as well. So next week, you guys can give your perspective on what the hell happened to Juan Borgia.
Okie dokie. That was interesting. I mean, it's always fun unpacking the shenanigans of our ancestors.
I know. This is what I say, guys. Like, literally tell your kids, if your kids don't like history, then they're missing the point of history.
Yeah. Exactly.
Literally academic gossip.
It's 1840 gossip column.
Yes.
That's what it is.
If you're tutoring your kids in history, like, go and read what the history is and then make it fun for them. Like, talk to them like it's like, because these are real people. Like, this like literally happened. You know, like, people are reading people's diaries in the Vatican archives and being like, y'all ain't gonna believe this shit. Like this is crazy stuff. And so this is why history to me is so freaking fun, is that we've got these scandalous stories, and it shaped our lives. Like, their scandal shapes our lives today. So, it's interesting. So,
makes us realize where we came from.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, Brycey, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Looking forward to next week, where we have installment 2.
We'll do the crime scene breakdown. Aquarius Rising Africa, SVU.
We will see you then. Thank you, everybody. Simona, Lisa, Colleen, Charmaine, Ulysses. It's so good to see you all, guys. Thank you for joining us. Always awesome to have you in the chats, keeping us company and giving us your 10 cents worth or 2 cents worth or $500 worth. We love them all the same. Okay. We will see you. I won't see you again today. I'll see you on Wednesday. Double dose, Jesse.
I'll be back Wednesday too.
Bless you all. Oh, and of course we have Brice, as you all know, on solutions. And we will see you.
We got more stigmatics to talk about.
Yeah, we're talking stigmata.
Juicy, weird, juicy, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. Take good care of yourselves. See you soon. God bless you all. Bye-bye.